Who wants to share next? Jody?
I'll go partly because some parts of what Laura just shared really resonated with me. So, so guilt for me, I'll turn over my page because I wrote pages. So of course it's the scenario with my sister Jan that sort of came to mind specifically. Big shocker, I know. But if I think about generally what guilt means to me, it's when I've done something that has impacted others in a negative way. I'm a firstborn child. I come by my over responsibility very honestly. And as I was hearing you talk with Laura, I actually wondered if she was a firstborn as well, just because I think I've lived my life taking responsibility for how others feel. And I didn't actually realize that until I was listening to you and Laura speak. So thank you for that. What guilt does to me is it controls me. So, and what I mean by that is I have lived my life trying to be accepted, trying to be loved. And I did that by trying to be perfect according to their rules. Mm-hmm. And so that guilt is a way of controlling me to be perfect according to what they need in order for me to belong. So that's my lifelong story. I'm so coming out of that. It's surprising that still tears come to me, and I'm an easy crier to begin with. But it amazes me that even though I've done so much work around, being, and Laura, don't take this in any other way except for there were times where I actually was abandoned, forgotten at the schoolyard in kindergarten, and sat there in the playground for 3 hours because my mom had forgotten to pick me up. So there, like that. So we're talking about something really different, but where do I want to go with that? So as I was writing, one of the things I realized was I know that I'm setting a healthy boundary with my sister in terms of she doesn't get to talk to me that way anymore. Trying to say to her things like, let's just agree to disagree. You see it really different than I do, and difference is okay. That's one thing my family doesn't do well, is difference. Difference somehow is threatening to my family. And so I'm trying to sort of get to a place of difference is okay. So I'm trying to set boundaries. And then what came up for me is, do I feel selfish about that? Like, is this guilt, or is this me actually thinking that I'm being selfish because I'm actually doing something for myself? I'm setting boundaries for myself because it's what feels right for me. I'm living my life the way I want to versus, for the previous 51 years, I lived it according to what my family wanted me to be. And so I think it's more I'm struggling with this idea that I'm being selfish than actual guilt.
Are you labeling selfish as a bad thing?
I think I have, like, unconsciously, I think I am. So when I sort of realized that, and when you ask the question, could this just be me taking care of myself? Absolutely. But I think that's where the guilt comes from, is as I'm setting boundaries for myself because it's the right thing to do, and it's actually impacting my family and my parents in particular. So I think that's where that's coming from.
It's really hard.
And just that whole function of guilt.
Yeah, it's really hard to change the way that you operate without hurting other people, because that's what they know, that's what they expect, that's what they're comfortable with. And so people have this illusion that you can change, that you can grow, that you can become, your authentic self, and everybody else is going to be fine with that. That's not what happens. it's a very volatile process, and it's very upsetting for the people in your life because they don't want you to change. You know, even if they do want you to change, they don't want you to change because they're comfortable with how you are. They're comfortable with, no matter how fucked up it is, the way that things operate in the family, the way that things operate in the community, the way that things operate. You know, people are much would prefer the horror that they know, you know, to something different. And so when you change, when you grow, when you evolve, when you become more of your authentic self, and especially if that means that you're going to be selfish in a good way, you know, I mean, I think that selfish should be rebranded as a very healthy thing to do, because, you know, when you don't care for yourself first, you really aren't caring for anyone else, you know. And when you care for yourself first, and when you can be your authentic self, when you can be a healthy version of yourself, that's the best thing you can offer anybody, you know. Even if you do nothing for them, just to model that in any environment is such a gift, no matter how it's received. You know, even if it's received with tears and rage, it's a gift. But it's very hard to transform your relationship with yourself without lighting other people on fire, you know. And you have a choice to feel guilty about that, or you have a choice to say, I wasn't that person that they were comfortable with. I wasn't able to function in that dynamic that works for them. Not they need to change, not they need, that's not yours. They can stay there, they can do whatever they need to do or not need to do. But it didn't work for you. It doesn't work for you. You need to change yourself and your environment to something that does work for you. And however that is received is not yours. And there is no, if and we'll see with the visualization if you can get there, but there really is no place for a feeling of guilt for that, you know, for connecting with your authentic self, for living your true wisdom and life. There's no shame, there's no guilt for that, you know. And how other people respond to it is okay. It might not be enjoyable to experience, it might not be pleasant to watch, but it's not yours. And that, I think, is, we want to take it on because then we feel like we can do something about it. But all that does is get us back into that loop of you know, stuff that isn't ours. So that's great. And I think that you should it would be great to imagine how you could rebrand selfishness for yourself, you know, and really make it a positive word that, and something that you aspire to. Because I think that it's really key with the kind of backgrounds I think we all come from, to really see that as, and the idea of, you put on your mask first in the airplane when the oxygen goes out. You don't put on your child, even your infant child's mask, because then you might both go under. You put on your mask first. And none of us has put on our mask, right? You know, like we spent our whole life giving the oxygen away and gasping for air. So what would happen if we took the oxygen first and then looked at, you know, what, and all we really have for anybody else is love and empathy. That's what we have to give them. We can't fix them. We can't change their environments or their choices, you know? Yeah. And the question too, what do you get from guilt that you need? We don't do anything that we don't get something from. So it might not be something pretty, but if you're feeling guilty, it's giving you something that you're comfortable with, something that you need to have until you stop, until you decide, I don't need that anymore. I'm going to put that down. That's not mine. I'm done. I don't need that anymore. But you have to decide that, because we don't do it unless we're getting something from it. Okay. Thank you, Jody. Who's next? Rachel?
Oh, she's on mute.
Oh, you're muted. Are you talking?
I'm talking away. Yeah, so the main guilt issue that I'm having now, but I've always had, is leaving behind the people that I care about the most, especially my mom.
Mhm.
And I guess what kind of came up for me is that she couldn't live the life that she wanted to live because she had us. So maybe I feel bad, like I'm only here because of her, so like I can't live my best life. So that kind of came up. And then
And do you believe that?
no. No, it's just like a feeling that I had. It's not something.
Yeah.
I have this thing where I take on other people's shit and I know it's not mine. Like, so now I'm like creating these boundaries that we talked about before. And I don't want to say that people are jealous, but I think not that I'm confident. I guess I am confident, or like when my mind is made up, like this is what I'm doing, this is your shit, this is my shit. And I'm just gonna go ahead and it triggers like insecurities for them. And then I feel like I made them feel like shit, but I didn't. Like that's their stuff, you know? Um, so that came up.
There might be jealousy. I think it's hard when you see someone else grow and change and evolve in a way that, even if you're not consciously aware you want to, that and a lot of times that comes back as like, oh, this person thinks they're better. Oh, her shit don't stink kind of thing. And that, that's again theirs, you know.
Yeah, I actually did write that, like, that they'll think that like I'm better than them, like my shit doesn't stink. But that was also me like saying that I'm triggering insecurities rather than just saying that they're jealous. Like that's me protecting them,
Yeah.
even though I know that they put a lot of stuff on me. But then like the last time I was home and I was talking about like maybe going to Arizona, my dad is like crying, like he can't even take the thought of it, because he would just miss me too much and I'm his best friend. And I'm like, they like my dad lived all over the place and like that was okay, and he wasn't in my life for like 10 years, and I never give them shit. And my mom was always working like 3 jobs trying to take care of us, and like I never gave them shit, or at least maybe I did and I haven't realized, or maybe it manifests in a different way. But I don't know, I guess my guilt is just doing really good in life and just kind of like moving on and leaving like the shitty town and like leaving my mom's house. But I do know that I can't give from a place of emptiness. Like my mom, she can't retire. She doesn't have any sort of retirement plan at all. She can't live off of her social security. And she texts me, I swear it happens like once a month, like, where are we gonna go? What are we gonna do? Like, I need to buy a house, I need to buy property. Where do you want to live? Like, how are we gonna do this? And I'm just, it's so like overbearing, like I can't take it. So last time I kind of had to check her, like, Mom, you got to stop texting me this. We do this every month. And I keep telling you, you have to do what you want to do for you. Like I can only do what I can do for me. Um, but also if I don't, like, I want to write a book, like there's all these things I want to do that I could really be successful if I apply myself, and then I could help you. Like right now I can't help any of you guys. And I don't know. And then I realized that that guilt is kind of like just an excuse. Like I stay there. It's an excuse for me to kind of like feed my fear of possibly failing or succeeding or just kind of going into the unknown.
Mhm.
Um, so, and then a little bit is like, I feel like a little bit of my ego comes up, like, um, because I want to tell them, like, you're stuck, you need a therapist, like, I got the help, like, if you really apply yourself, there, like, we're no different from the next person, like, we all have this inside of ourselves. It's just like knowing that you have some issues and you just like even read a book, read a self-help book. Like I get really frustrated and it's not just my mom or my dad. It was like this guy I was dating and like the second I walk away, I feel bad. So, I guess that's my guilt.
It's interesting because you said you listed off all these things that to me are accomplishments, and then you said, and I feel guilty for them. And so, there's another way to look at that where you could feel proud,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and I think that the impulse around what other people should do is if they did that, then you wouldn't have to feel guilty, if they took more responsibility. But you don't have to feel guilty no matter what. I mean, at the end of the day, you you can't do it for them. You can't, as you pointed out. And yes, if you were, very financially successful, you could help them out more. But that doesn't change their demons, like
Mm.
giving them money doesn't change what's not working for them.
Mm.
It's still not working for them, and it's their journey, and they may not get there, and that's all of our struggle is how can you be okay that someone you love is on a difficult path
Mm.
and they might not get there, and you're going to have to watch it,
Right.
you know and it's hard. It's hard, and you but the best thing you can do is to be that role model and to show people that there is another way, and that doesn't mean that you're not going to struggle and you're not going to have difficulty, but you're going to experience it differently because you're on a growth journey. You're on a path where you see all experience as the potential for growth, and it's much harder to watch other people struggle, especially if they're not choosing that path. They're not choosing growth and learning and growing. But the question is, are you responsible? Because I think, at its core, guilt is about responsibility. Guilt is about being responsible for something. Are you responsible for what's happening in their lives?
Is that a question or you're just saying,
No, it's a question.
"Oh, no, I know I'm not."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so then what is the guilt giving you? What is it, how is it serving you? Because if you're not getting something from it, you wouldn't engage with it. You would transmute it into something else. And so it's what do you get from that guilt, that you need right now, and I'm not telling anybody they should feel guilty or not feel guilty, but if you feel guilty for something that you are not responsible for, it's serving some kind of a purpose. You're getting something from it. And it may be better to figure out what that is and decide, do you want that thing, or is that thing old, and do you want to let it go?
Mhm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, that's I guess why I said like that guilt is just kind of like my excuse to stay in a comfortable place.
Yeah.
Even though it's not comfortable and I don't want to be there anymore. Like I'm slowly growing out of this, but it's taken me a really long time to get here.
Yeah.
So I guess that's, you know,
And it may be too part of like being able to not like you said, you know, you're leaving behind people, specifically your mom, you know, and not that you're gonna ever, you know, completely leave her, but that, you know, like the guilt is a tie to her, you know, and that if you didn't feel guilty about her not being where you are and her not getting where you're going, at least right now, that's a connection that's lost.
yeah.
And you know, maybe there's a better or healthier connection to have with her than feeling guilty about what you can't do for her, or what she isn't that you are.
Yeah. And like I do want to make them proud, you know, and I am proud of my accomplishments and I really want to step into that more. And you know, if I have the level of success that I think I can have, that then I'm coming from a way different place and it would feel so much better. It's just like kind of just like cutting the cords and like breaking ties right now is kind of where I'm trying to.
And I think it will be very difficult to get where you want to go being weighted down by guilt.
Yeah.
I think it's something that has to be cut loose in order to have the level of confidence and presence and you know, show up in the way you'll need to get where you want to go.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And it's a process, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy, Leah. I've not gotten to any drawing yet. Ah, okay.
I'll go at the end.
Okay, Leah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I really do connect with what a lot of the ladies are saying. I definitely associate guilt with selfishness. I again, like I can feel guilty about pretty much anytime I feel like I'm not meeting my responsibilities or I'm letting people down. I pretty much automatically feel guilty. A lot of my guilt definitely stems from my children. Yeah, like in the past, I ran myself completely ragged, trying to manage my husband, my ex, had severe depression for pretty much the entire marriage. So he was emotionally volatile and unavailable. And so I did literally everything. I was the main breadwinner. I was my kids' everything. And I also took care of this very unhappy man. And so I gave up pretty much every single one of my desires and needs and wants, because I had to keep the wheels go on the train. I had to keep this thing rolling. And so I completely have tapped I've taken on over the past, I've taken on a lot of stuff that wasn't my shit. And I had a couple of like nervous breakdowns because I was just, yeah, owning stuff that wasn't mine. I've like, you know, now that I've left, it's, you know, being a single mom creates a whole nother level of guilt. Like I do feel like a horrible parent most of the time. And I do feel like I'm kind of messing my kids up. My kids are gonna be screwed. So I that's where I feel a lot of guilt is, not fulfilling my role as a dutiful parent. And yeah, because they know me as, I feel like I have they know me from my past life where I did everything, and now I'm transitioning where I'm like, I need to have I need a life. I need
Mhm.
I need happiness. And so it is they know how to play the guilt card, and they we both like, yeah, they end up they'll know how to guilt me into doing stuff for them, buying, um because if I do put up a boundary and say this isn't happening, then um yeah, they know how to guilt me into it, to guilt me into what they want. And but yeah, usually I feel like guilt always makes me feel inadequate, and like I'm failing in some way. I do, like, I realized when I was writing that I do act like I have had a belief system that my needs should come second.
Mm.
Like, it does feel wrong. Like, work and kids should come first, and then what's left over will trickle down to me. And that's how I feel like things should. That is a belief. I didn't realize that was a belief system that I have been operating with.
How does that sound to you when you say it out loud?
It's, I don't know, like, part of me sounds like, yeah, that's right, like, that sounds right, that's about right, like, so part of it resonates with me, but part of it um it makes me a little sad.
Is
That
that imagine that was your kids. Is that what you want your kids for your kids? Is that the life you want for them?
no, like, I don't know, like, I value, oh, I don't know, like, my mom modeled it. My
Mhm.
mom still does it to this day. She gives up her own, like, self-sacrifices herself,
Mhm.
and there is a part of me that just has that, I need to self-sacrifice. Like, I need to sacrifice myself for other people. Like, I feel like I feel like if I'm not doing that, I'm not a worthy human. Like,
Wow.
yeah, like, I I have put self-sacrifice on a pedestal, and I do it with like with work, with it's yeah, and I haven't realized that's, I feel it's noble. It's like I'm very like into like these principles, right? It's noble. You have to do what's, I don't know.
And how do you feel that that philosophy has what has it led to for you inside and outside?
Yeah. But yeah, I'm totally out of touch with myself. I don't even I don't even know. Yeah, like I gave up my own dreams and hopes, and I gave up, so I'm left with nothing.
Mhm.
Hmm. And I am starting to realize, like, I have to live with myself every day.
Yeah.
So when I give up all of myself to other people, and then when I'm alone, I have nothing. I'm just a shell. half the time I've just felt like a shell of a person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it hasn't really got me too far.
And I wonder if there's a connection between the anxiety and
Oh,
that.
for sure. Yeah, 100%. But like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I've dug myself into such a hole that there's just no way. Like I just feel like is there a point where I've given up too much of myself and there's no coming back?
I don't believe that.
Well, I feel like I've given up so much that I don't even have anything, like some days I don't even know if I have anything to work with. Like I've just given up even, I have to start creating parts. Yeah, because I feel, yeah. Yeah, I wrote the one question. I said I would never feel like and this is how I am. Like I hate emotions, and I wish I honestly wish I had no needs or wants or emotions.
Mm.
That's how because then I wouldn't have to attend to anything, right? That's how I would never feel guilty again if I had no needs, wants, or emotions. I would never feel guilty.
Mm.
And then I could just fully attend to everyone else. I could I could worry, deal with everyone else. I don't want to have to deal with myself. I think that's the thing. I'll deal with other people. I don't want to deal with myself. So I think guilt, like it does allow me to avoid myself.
Mm.
It's a tool so I don't have to deal with. And when I feel guilt, I think when I feel guilty, that makes me feel like I'm responsible and committed.
Mm.
It's a motivator for me. Like if I did something wrong and didn't feel guilty, I'd feel like a shitty human.
Mm.
Right? Guilt makes me like, oh, I'm a good person because I felt guilty about that.
Uh-huh.
So
The last two things you said are really huge. You said that you use guilt to avoid yourself, and that is a tool to be able to avoid yourself. And I think that's a universal thing with guilt. I think it's been in every single person's comments, the way that we use guilt to avoid things that are we go into guilt to avoid going somewhere else. And that if we feel guilty, then we can recognize that we're a good person, because a good person would feel guilty, and that a responsible and committed person would feel guilty. I think those are two very universal aspects of guilt that command a lot of attention internally, but I think are really a lot of smoke and mirrors, to the one to avoid yourself. And then the other one is, I have to feel guilty because if I don't feel guilty, then I'm a shitty person, right? Instead of, I don't feel guilty and it's okay that I don't feel guilty. I don't have to feel guilty. It's I have to feel guilty, because if I don't feel guilty, I'm not responsible, I'm not committed, I'm shitty. And so I think that that's something we put ourselves into a place of guilt feelings in order not to feel like a shitty person. But I think there's an alternative to, it's not an either or.
So it's healthy though to feel guilty for stuff that you actually did wrong.
I don't know. I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know, I think that's like a platitude, like you should feel guilty for something you did wrong. I don't know that that's true at all.
If I murdered someone, And
I would
should
need
feel
a lot more details. I would need a lot more details to tell you whether or not you should feel guilty. And I wouldn't be the person to tell you. But I can tell you for me that I have done things that other people may think that are bad, that are some of the best things I've ever done in my life, you know, and that only you can say whether or not what you do feel, whether you should feel or not feel is not even at play in my mind. But what do you feel, and do you really feel it? Because what you brought up here is guilt is a smoke and mirrors feeling that frequently we don't feel it. We go there to avoid feeling something else. I don't want to feel like a shitty person, so I'm going to feel guilty, because if
Yeah.
those are my choices. I can either feel guilty, or I can feel like a shitty person and think that I'm a shitty person. But it's not that simple. You know, guilt is a real black and white feeling, you know,
Yeah.
and it's really masks our gray. It masks the messy stuff that we don't want to get into to figure out, well, what is this and what does it really mean? But I think that very few people ever intentionally hurt other people. They are almost always running from their own pain. And so if somebody's running from their pain, are they guilty or are they sad? You know, is that something to have empathy for, or something to blame somebody for? I don't know. If I'm the person on the receiving end of the bad thing, I want to blame them. But if I'm an observer, I can see, they're running from their pain. That's really sad. I have empathy. So it's also who are you in the scenario? Where are you the victim of the bad behavior, or are you the perpetrator of the bad behavior? Or are you an observer? Because when you're an observer,
Yeah.
it all looks gray, right?
Yeah, and I guess like guilt is like, it's really about how it appears to other people, right?
Frequently.
Because like for me, yeah, it's like it is wanting approval and acceptance, like that it is tied to that. So like when I kind of determine if I should feel guilty, it's like, well, how do I look
Mhm.
to the other person? Like, right, are they mad at me? Do I look like a shitty person? Okay, they are mad. They do think I'm a shitty person, so I'm guilty.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you're the person, you know, like a couple of people I've mentioned being their own worst judge, because they were, you know, their standards, that standard of perfection, that need to do everything right. They're the ones there. It's their own evaluation. It's our own evaluation sometimes, but
Yeah.
it's black
Yeah.
and white thinking. Oh, either I'm a shitty person or I feel guilty. Feeling guilty is better, so I'm going to do that. That's very, very black and white thinking. When you get into the messy situation, it's probably neither of those things. You know, it's probably just a lot of feelings and probably very little blame to go around to anyone, you know, because mostly people are struggling and they
Yeah.
hurt each other and they do things that they would have not done under other circumstances, you know, and when you can pull back a little bit
Mhm.
and look at it through the eyes of empathy, and to say, well, what did I do here, and what happened, what did they do? It changes things, you know, when you're not looking for who's the shitty person, who's wrong, who's bad, when you're just looking for where's the struggle,
Yeah.
how am I struggling here, how is the other person, how is
Yeah.
the circumstance a struggle, you know, it shifts to empathetic thinking for yourself and for everyone in the circumstance, you know. I mean, and I think that this idea that you know, self-sacrifice is noble, that's something that I was taught and that I believed for many years, and I don't anymore. I, you know, I think that that you know, it's a learned behavior, you know, it's a learned belief system, but I don't know, you know, everybody has to decide for themselves what the value in it is. But when you say you're not a worthy human, that's a very strong judgment, you know, that's a very strong judgment. And that was given to you, you know, that was given to you because you said yourself that this is your mother's belief system and that she has always done it and she's still doing it. And so you grew up believing that if you didn't sacrifice yourself, you were not a worthy human. That's a huge burden. And certainly not anything that you should feel guilty for, you know, like that sense of, because you also said that you gave up all your dreams and you did for everyone else, you know.
Hmm.
And where's the guilt in that, you know? I mean, there might be in the act of doing that, but from the perspective of the way that you're looking at things, you know. So it's much more complicated. And what I would like to do, Nancy, I want to hear from you, but I want to make this a two-part because there's so much stuff here. And I want everybody to keep a guilt journal this week. And every time you feel guilty, I want you to write about the circumstances. And I want you to then try to look at it from the perspective of, what if nobody's wrong? What if everybody's doing their best? What happens then? Does anybody have to be guilty, or could everybody just be struggling and doing their best? And what is everybody's struggle? What is everybody's struggle? And how are these things bumping up against each other in a way that makes you uncomfortable? That leads to, okay, I'm going to go for guilt because that's comfortable. You know, when something's uncomfortable, when something is feels like there should be blame, taking it on is the easiest way to manage that. Oh, okay, I'll feel guilty. I'll take responsibility, you know, for whatever the circumstances. So I think, and let's have guilt be the topic again next week and do a check-in on our guilt journal for the week. And then we'll do the visualization and the drawing and see what comes out of it. Because I think this is a really, really big topic. Okay, Nancy, do you want to share, and then we'll wrap it up for tonight?
Okay, I won't talk a lot. We'll talk next week. Me, I've been working on guilt for like 30 years. I started with that. So I've got some pretty good tools because I was suffering from guilt like all day long before. Now the sentence I asked myself, it's, do I decide this as hatred, an act of hatred against the other person, or is it an act of love for me? And I go deep inside of myself, and I don't act against people. I don't act to make people feel bad. I don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm gonna give shit to that person. No. But if people are not nice to me, they do this, they do that, I ask myself, like I had to do with my family, that even my daughter, it's a choice I did, and not everybody understands why. But it's not because I don't love my mother and my sister and my daughter that I chose me. I chose that I'm worth having people respect me, and because they did not respect me, I decided to choose me. And it's an act of love for me. It's not because I hate them. And I still have some forgiving to do with my mother and all of my family. But I'm able now to like send them some love and some light and some, I wish them the best, but I wish me the best. And I don't want to feel guilty about that. And by asking me that question, it really helps me to do that. Because for me, guilt is a tool. And it's a tool that's been thought by religion through ages. It's the power of religion. All religion are based on guilt they make feel to everybody. So it's been taught generation through generation. And even though we never, like me, I never was going to church because my father didn't want to go. And so that was it. We were the family in the neighborhood who didn't go to church. But all the notion of self-sacrifice comes from there, and guilt comes from there. And it's all in our minds because we have been taught we need to be good, and that implies good for others. But somebody took my attention on, I don't know, I'm going to translate it because in French it says the prayer in Catholic Church is love your neighbor or love the others like you love yourself. So everybody heard love the others. But when you say like yourself, love the others like yourself, that implies that you have to love yourself first. Then you love the others like yourself. But that was not taught, you know? So these are reflection I had through the years, and that helps me a lot. Sometimes I have a little, like when I quit my job as a nurse, I felt guilty. I felt like I was letting my team down. But if I hadn't stepped out, I would have drowned in there. It was impossible for me to stay there. So it wasn't against them. It was an act of love for me that I did. So I don't feel guilty. I don't feel guilt. And that's the way I manage it. And I remember one time my father that came at my apartment, and it was the first time he moved to come at my place because he never wanted to hear about me and I was not important. But he came because I did something that hurt my sister. When I decided to, like, say, you step aside because you did this, and you are not going to do stuff like this to me anymore. It's not acceptable, and I'm not taking it. And that wasn't an act of hatred for her, but an act of love for me. And I said, nobody on earth is important enough to make me feel that way. And my father came at my place and he said, and he was real, that was a real strong-minded man, and he was an officer in the army and was always giving the rules, and that's the way it's going to work. And he came and yelled at me and said, "You're not allowed to do that to your sister. You should be ashamed of yourself, and you should." And I said, "You listen to me now." And it was the first time in my life I could put myself first and make him listen. And I said, I'm not doing that because I hate my sister. I'm doing that because I love myself, and she needs to respect me. And if she's not allowed to be next to me, and she has to think about it. And if she does, and she comes back and her behavior changes, it's okay. So that's what I had to say. I'm pretty, I was pretty into it, wasn't I? But I really do believe that guilt is a tool that people use to manipulate us. And I'm not standing for it anymore. I'm not standing, I'm not playing, and I'm not dancing that dance anymore. So thank you for listening. So I don't think I'm gonna have a lot to work to write this week, because this is one part I've pretty much, but we'll see, maybe some stuff will come up, but I've got so many other things, girl, don't worry. I'm not better than you, I'm just older.
Well, maybe you'll have some insights you can share, like you just did, you know, that can be beneficial. And also, if you do have any circumstances that come up where you are able to use your question and to, you know, evaluate a potential guilty feeling, that could also be beneficial. And I'll be interested to see what comes up for you, having worked through this to such a degree, what comes up in the visualization and drawing next week for you. I'll be interested to
Good.
see that.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's just, you know, keep an eye on guilt this week and journaling about anything that comes up in that realm, and trying to look at the circumstance. What if nobody was wrong? What if everybody was just struggling and doing their best, and those struggles were, you know, hitting each other, and what if you weren't responsible? What if you're not responsible? Then what are you? Are you shitty? Are you okay? Could you be anything else? You know, or are there any other options other than a responsible, committed, good person and a shitty person? And what if you had empathy for everybody, for yourself, for the other person, and everybody kept their own stuff? How would that be? Because sometimes that's intolerable. So how would that feel if they had their stuff and you had your stuff and you weren't responsible for theirs? And then we'll talk about it next week, and we'll do some drawing. Anybody have anything else they want to share before we close?
I'm just gonna make one comment.
Yeah.
When you talk about responsible, I can't see how, and we'll talk about this next week, but something to ponder on. As a parent, how you're not responsible for your kids, even if they're adult kids, it's like who they became or their personalities or whatever, like how are we not held accountable or responsible for how they developed or what the kind of person they grew into? Because certainly parents have an influence on their kids.
Yes, but you're certainly not the only influence, and there are people that believe that you are in no way responsible, that you're a guide or a shepherd, but that you're not, you don't have any responsibility for the life of the, you know, that being. So a lot of people believe a lot of different things. And so I would say, you know, like maybe write out what you believe and then question it. You know, what if that's not true? What else could be true? Maybe even look up some other ways of thinking, you know, like Google, you know, is a parent responsible for how an adult child turns out, and see what kinds of, because it's going to be a lot of things. And I think that what's coming up a lot in this conversation is black and white thinking, and across the board, and the idea that and blame and you know, right and wrong and good and bad. And so if you Google something, you're going to get a lot of different types of ideas. And so that's one way to kind of like just start chipping away at the black and white thinking. What if that's not true? What if a parent is not responsible for their adult child, regardless of any circumstances? What if every being is responsible for themselves, and you know, they physically can't care for themselves as babies, and they might not physically be able to care for themselves when they're dying. But you know, for most of your life, most people are able to physically care for themselves. But who's responsible for the internal caring? And certainly there's an argument to be made that when children are children, it's their parents. But even then, like, you know, with my kids, I don't want them to see me as responsible for their internal lives. So we do a lot of stuff around taking responsibility and being in charge of your own internal relationship with yourself, you know. And some people will get to that when they're an adult. Some people will never get to that. But who should be? Who's responsible? Are you responsible for your adult children? I would say no. You would say yes. Those are two opinions, and there's probably 100 other ones. But the idea behind the black and white thinking is, let's look at all of them and start to just think, what if there's not a right answer? What if there's a lot of different answers and there's some truth in all of them and they're all partly wrong? Isn't that, what kind of world is that? A bad one, huh? I see it. But you know, like, so what if, just leave it in that place for this week of exploring what if there is no right.
Can I add something?
Of course.
It's our generation, I think, that invented that whole responsibility for the feelings our kids have. Because before that, they had 12 to 18 kids. They didn't have time to deal with that shit, excuse the expression. They had to put clothes on them, food in their belly, and a roof over their head. And after that, it's the oldest kid that would raise the other kids. That's it.
You're right.
That's it. So that's a brand new thing, that we are responsible for the way they feel. On my mother's side, there were 12 girls, no guys. Only 2 parents. They didn't divorce. My grandfather was working and my grandmother was cooking all day long. 12 kids. It's like you own your own restaurant, you know? There's not 2 girls that have the same feeling about their parents and the family. We all make our own choice, not knowingly, but our interpretation of how we were raised is inside of us. So we are the one who decide, my mom was good, my mom was not good, and da-da-da-da. I come from a highly dysfunctional family, so I know what inhuman is, but it's not all families like that, you know. Mine is pretty special. But mostly, usually mothers, they just care and want the best for their kids in a normal family. But the kids are going to decide for themselves if it's enough or not. You know, maybe your daughter, Laura, maybe your daughter is, she needs to feel like she was abandoned, to have some stuff to talk about, because she hears everybody had a rough time around her and she had nothing to say about you. So she said, yes, she just walked out. I have something to say, and I'm gonna be the centerpiece, the actress, the lead of my show now. My mother did something. Finally, after 20 years of her being perfect, I've got something on her. And now she uses guilt. And she's winning the game. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I
That's
do
the way I
believe,
see it. It's a tool. It's a powerful tool to make people bend their head and do what you want them to do.
she does win. I mean, I say win because,
Yeah.
you know, everybody ends up listening to what she has to say.
But I will say only you can put guilt on yourself. At the end of the day, somebody can offer it to you extremely strongly even, but you have to take it. And you're the one who really creates that feeling
yeah.
in yourself, and you're the one who puts that label. And so you can also be the one who says no.
Because see, just as Kelly was saying earlier, that like at Rachel, that she felt guilt, but she should feel pride for all the accomplishments she did. You walked away because you didn't want to smack her face off. So you did a real good thing there. So you should be proud that you were strong enough to walk away. So that's the real thing. That's what really happened. So that's what I would tell my daughter, you know, you should be proud of me because I didn't smack your face off. You know, I walked away. So that's my way of saying things. That I'm Aries, you know, my birthday is next week. So that's my Aries.
You want to say,
Yeah, I've worked on that guilt.
Jody, were you trying to say something, or you're just putting your hand in the air?
Yeah, thank you. First, I just want to say, Nancy, we're Aries sisters. That's
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone.
Earn my green.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, after hearing Nancy talk, that one of the things that I've heard from everyone really is about how others perceive us or other people's opinion of us and how we buy into their interpretation, which is through their own eyes. And I found myself sort of thinking about that off and on as I was listening to everybody today. And particularly for myself, I'm sort of asking myself the why question. You know, my sister right now is making me a demon in terms of truth telling with something. Because she likes to keep secrets and I don't. And I'm buying into her interpretation. That's why I'm feeling so sad and so awful, but that's her interpretation. So where's mine?
Right.
Why are we buying into other people's interpretations about the choices that we make in our lives? That's just what I'm leaving with today.
Yeah. And I think internalizing those voices and then running those tapes in our own head. So that we're not even seeing it as theirs. We've taken it in. Yeah, for sure. All right. So let's explore this throughout the week, whenever it comes up. When I try to carry a pad or a little pad with me if I'm trying to track something, so that I can make a note, or make a note in your phone, like make a note section in your phone for guilt. And then just because if you put it off, you won't do it. But if you just stop and take like 20 seconds and just write a few words about what happened, and put the date, then you can keep track of it.
Or I use I don't know if the word is right in English, dictaphone.
Yeah.
Oh.
The memo on your phone.
Yeah, I talk on it and it goes on like the old tapes in
Yeah.
the old days. But that works too. That's what I do. It's quicker.
Yeah. And most phones have a voice memo on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can actually
That's
do it
it.
on your phone. Okay, cool. thank you all so much. And sorry we didn't get to any drawing, but I feel like this is a really important topic and a lot of stuff came up tonight. And I feel like we're going to get even more throughout the week and next week. So thank you again for your sharing and openness, and I'll see you next week.
Thank
you,
you,
guys.
Kelly.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Kelly.
You're welcome. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.